Sarah's day had begun with the usual stress of travel, but nothing could have prepared her for the mounting frustration she now felt in the crowded airport terminal. She clutched the hand of her small son, Tommy, whose tiny fingers felt impossibly delicate in hers, yet stubbornly squirmed and twisted as if they wanted to escape. Her bag, overstuffed and heavy, swung awkwardly on her shoulder, while a smaller backpack tugged at her arm, packed with all the essentials for a young child's snacks, toys, a change of clothes, and the worn little blanket Tommy refused to leave behind. The airport smelled of coffee, fast food, and the faint metallic tang of luggage carts, a mixture that made Sarah feel both rushed and overwhelmed. The terminal was alive with motion, travelers hustling through security lines, mothers chasing after toddlers, business people striding with purpose, and the low hum of announcements echoing off the high ceilings. The wait for their flight had already been longer than expected. A mechanical delay meant that passengers were crammed into tight seating areas, children bouncing impatiently, and tempers were beginning to fray. Sarah had been attempting to keep Tommy occupied with his coloring book, drawing simple shapes and animals, but after the third mistake with the crayons, he had thrown a small tantrum, shrieking loudly enough to draw a few glances from nearby travelers. Her patience, already frayed from the morning's delays and the stress of carrying both their luggage, snapped. She bent down to his level, trying to speak calmly, but her voice trembled with tension. "Tommy, please, just sit for a moment. Mommy is trying her best, okay?" But her words had no effect. The little boy's face twisted, tears spilling over the edge of his small cheeks, and his cries grew louder, echoing off the walls. Sarah's own face grew hot, her heart pounding not from worry but from the surge of frustration that often followed moments like this. She tried to take a deep breath, to calm herself, but the noise, the weight of the bags, and the demands of a restless child overwhelmed her. Her hands shook slightly as she tugged at his arm, hoping to guide him to the nearest seating area. And then it happened, a kind voice, soft and steady, broke through the chaos. "It's okay, little guy," the voice said, gentle and patient, kneeling down to Tommy's level. Sarah looked up, startled, and found herself staring at a man in a janitor's uniform, his cleaning cart parked nearby, brooms and dusters neatly arranged, reflecting the quiet orderliness he carried with him. His eyes were calm, friendly, and unexpectedly familiar, yet there was a strange sense of authority in the gentleness with which he spoke to her son. "I know it's hard sometimes," he added, giving Tommy a small reassuring smile. Sarah's first reaction was shock, then anger. How dare a stranger intervene? Her voice, sharp and tinged with disbelief, rang across the terminal. "Who do you think you are? Don't touch my child," she snapped, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment and frustration. Passengers around them glanced briefly, some offering sympathetic smiles, others discreetly returning to their own business. Tommy, sensing the tension, flinched but did not stop crying. Sarah's mind raced, a storm of conflicting emotions. She felt defensive, ashamed for losing her temper in public, and simultaneously grateful for the stranger's attempt to calm her son. But before she could gather her thoughts to respond, the janitor did something she could never have anticipated. He looked directly at her, eyes warm yet piercing, and spoke her name in a tone that made the bustling terminal seem to quiet around them. "Sarah, it's me, Michael." The words hung in the air, frozen in the chaos. Sarah's anger faltered, replaced by disbelief and shock. Her brows furrowed, and her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Michael. Her Michael from years ago, the one she hadn't seen since high school, the one who had helped her in ways she had never forgotten but had assumed she would never encounter again. Memories crashed into her mind: an afternoon in a small library, sunlight streaming through dusty windows, the scent of old books mingling with the faint aroma of pencils and paper. She remembered a time when Michael had gone out of his way to help her find a notebook she had left behind, a simple act that had meant more to her than she could ever explain. They had laughed, shared stories, and in that brief moment, she had felt a kind of friendship and understanding she rarely experienced. And now, here he was, kneeling in front of her child, the same calm, reassuring presence she had admired years ago. Sarah's knees weakened slightly, the weight of the day and the flood of memory making her feel unsteady. Tommy, sensing the shift in his mother's emotions, paused in his crying, looking up at Michael with wide, curious eyes. The janitor's gentle demeanor, the familiarity of his voice, seemed to bridge the gap between the present chaos and a cherished past she hadn't realized she missed. Sarah's hands, still gripping Tommy's, relaxed a little. She wanted to speak, to question, to demand an explanation, yet all she could do was stare. "Michael, how are you here?" she finally whispered, her voice trembling. Michael's smile was small, humble, and patient. "Life brings us to unexpected places," he said softly, as if the crowded airport had melted away around them. "And sometimes, it gives us a second chance to be there for people who mattered." The chaos of the terminal, rolling luggage, flight announcements, impatient travelers seemed to fade into the background. Sarah felt a mix of embarrassment for her outburst, relief for her child's sudden calm, and awe at the timing of this reunion. She looked down at Tommy, whose tears had slowed, and then back at Michael. The janitor's presence was both grounding and comforting, a reminder that even amidst life's daily stress and noise, moments of connection and kindness could emerge in the most unexpected places. Her own heart softened, guilt mingling with gratitude, as she realized that her frustration had blinded her not just to Michael's intervention, but to the simple truth that her son needed patience, and perhaps, that she herself had needed a reminder of the gentleness that existed in the world. For the first time in what felt like hours, Sarah felt a sense of calm wash over her, a quiet in the storm, as Michael spoke softly to Tommy, distracting him with a small, funny story that drew a giggle from the little boy. Sarah watched, mesmerized, as the tears faded from Tommy's face and a tentative smile appeared. She could feel the warmth of the memory and the present moment blending together, creating a strange but comforting sense of reunion, not just with Michael, but with a version of herself that had once known patience, kindness, and trust. The airport, with its crowded halls and relentless announcements, suddenly felt less overwhelming. In that moment, Sarah realized that life had a way of presenting lessons in the most unexpected circumstances, sometimes through the soft voice of a stranger, sometimes through the laughter of a child, and sometimes through the familiar face of someone she had thought she would never see again. And as she stood there, holding Tommy's hand and watching Michael kneel with gentle authority, Sarah understood that the rest of her day, her travel, and perhaps even her perspective on patience and connection, would never quite be the same again. Sarah could hardly believe what she was seeing. Michael, the janitor kneeling in front of her son, was not just a familiar face from the past, he was someone she had admired long before her life had grown complicated and heavy with responsibilities. Memories tumbled through her mind like leaves in the wind. She remembered their high school days, how Michael had always been kind, quietly helpful, and never seeking attention for the small acts of goodness he performed. He had once helped her prepare for a science fair project, offering guidance and encouragement when she felt nervous and unsure. She had never forgotten the way he had listened, really listened, making her feel understood in a way few people had. And now, after years of losing touch, here he was again, calm and patient, handling her son's tears as if they were no trouble at all. Tommy, sensing the difference in the energy around him, leaned slightly toward Michael, and Sarah saw the tension in her child's tiny shoulders ease. She realized that anger and frustration, which had seemed so urgent moments ago, had no place when someone could offer such gentle care. Her own hands, still gripping Tommy's, felt heavy and awkward, unsure where to rest, but her heart felt lighter than it had in weeks. The terminal around them continued its steady buzz, travelers moving in all directions, wheels of luggage rolling across the polished floor, announcements blaring intermittently, and distant laughter or frustration echoing in the space. Yet for Sarah, the world seemed to shrink, focusing on this small triangle of connection: her son, and Michael. She swallowed, feeling the lump in her throat, and tried to find words that could bridge the gap between past and present. I don't understand," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the hum of the crowd. "How are you here?" Michael straightened slightly, his eyes still gentle on Tommy, who was now peeking curiously at him. "I work here," he said simply, nodding toward the uniform he wore. "I've been here for a few years. I like being able to help people, especially children. And seeing you here today, it felt like the right moment to step in." Sarah felt her cheeks flush, partly from embarrassment over her earlier outburst, and partly from the flood of emotions she couldn't name. Gratitude, nostalgia, and a strange sense of wonder all mingled together, making her feel unsteady but alive. She had been so wrapped up in her own stress and daily worries that she had forgotten the simple truth of kindness, how it could appear unexpectedly, softening even the hardest moments. She watched Michael carefully, noting the way he had aged slightly, how his hair now had hints of gray, but his smile, the calm, patient smile, was exactly the same as she remembered. Her mind drifted back to the library, the day she had lost her notebook, and the way he had handed it back to her, smiling, saying, "I thought you might need this." That memory, small as it seemed at the time, had left a lasting impression on her, a reminder that some people in life mattered simply because of their consistent kindness. Now, watching him comfort Tommy, Sarah realized that the impact of his presence had not diminished with time. "Tommy seems happier with you," she said softly, unable to hide the wonder in her voice. He's calmed down." Michael chuckled quietly, a sound both familiar and soothing. Sometimes children just need someone to slow down with them, to see them for who they are and not what they're doing wrong. "He's a smart little boy, just needs patience and understanding." Sarah nodded slowly, feeling a lump form in her throat again. She had spent the last few weeks rushing through routines, frustrated by small inconveniences, and had forgotten that patience could make all the difference. Now, here in this crowded terminal, she realized the truth of Michael's words: patience was powerful, and even small acts of attention could heal tense moments. She looked at Tommy, who was now giggling at a small joke Michael had made, and felt a deep relief she could not put into words. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to relax, letting go of the frustration that had dominated her morning. She noticed travelers glancing at them with quiet curiosity, but she didn't care. This moment, brief as it was, mattered far more than the opinions of strangers. Michael glanced up at Sarah, his eyes meeting hers with a gentle understanding that made her heart ache a little. "You've been carrying a lot," he said quietly. "It's okay to be tired, to feel overwhelmed. Everyone needs a little help sometimes, and there's no shame in accepting it." Sarah's lips trembled as she nodded, realizing how true his words were. She had been trying to hold everything together alone, afraid to ask for help, forgetting that support could appear in the most unexpected forms. Michael's presence reminded her that kindness could arrive without warning and that trust, even after years apart, could be renewed in an instant. She felt a strange mix of emotions: embarrassment, nostalgia, gratitude, and even a bit of hope that perhaps life could surprise her in ways she had stopped expecting. Tommy, now leaning comfortably against Michael, laughed softly as the janitor made another small, funny remark, and Sarah felt warmth flood through her chest. She watched the scene unfold and realized that the bond between adults and children could be strengthened by something as simple as calm attention, gentle words, and genuine care. Sarah realized that life often presented lessons in moments she least expected, and sometimes those lessons arrived in the form of someone she had once known and admired. She felt a renewed sense of connection, both to her child and to the world around her, recognizing that patience and understanding were not weaknesses but powerful ways to transform moments of stress into moments of care. For the first time that morning, she allowed herself to breathe fully, feeling the weight on her shoulders lighten just a little. She knew that the rest of the day would still be filled with challenges: flights, luggage, and the unpredictability of travel, but the memory of Michael's calm presence and the simple act of comforting Tommy would remain with her, a reminder that kindness could appear when least expected and that even brief encounters could leave a lasting impact. As she watched her son smile again, her heart swelled with gratitude, and she silently promised herself to carry this lesson forward, to approach life with a little more patience, a little more understanding, and a little more awareness of the people who quietly make a difference in the lives of others. And in that noisy, bustling airport, amidst the rolling suitcases, scattered announcements, and hurried travelers, Sarah felt an unexpected peace, a quiet space carved out by a simple act of care from a familiar face she had never forgotten. Sarah's mind was still reeling from seeing Michael after so many years, and yet the way he handled Tommy's tears made her feel a sense of calm she hadn't felt in a long time. She noticed small details she had forgotten about him: the careful way he knelt on the cold airport floor, the patience in his eyes, and the way his voice never rose even when surrounded by the noise and chaos of the terminal. She felt a mixture of awe and gratitude. Tommy, now holding one of Michael's hands, had stopped crying completely and was even smiling, something Sarah hadn't seen for hours. She couldn't help but reflect on the difference one person's calm presence could make. The memory of her own frustration, the heat of anger she had felt moments ago, seemed almost foreign now. Her thoughts drifted back to her childhood, remembering times when adults had acted impatient or harsh, making her feel small and unheard. She realized how Michael's gentle nature had always stood out, even back then, and how comforting it was to see that he had not changed in that regard. Around them, the airport buzzed with life. Travelers hurried with purpose, announcements boomed across the terminal, luggage trolleys rattled against polished floors, and distant laughter or hurried footsteps echoed. But Sarah felt as if she were in a small bubble, a quiet space created by Michael's presence. She felt a warmth spread through her chest as she realized the importance of small gestures. Something as simple as kneeling down, speaking softly, and paying full attention to a child had transformed Tommy's mood and eased her own stress. She watched Michael, noting how naturally he interacted with children and adults alike, and she wondered how many moments like this he had quietly created for people over the years without anyone noticing. It was humbling and inspiring. She thought about how rare it was to meet someone whose kindness felt so genuine and unselfish, and she felt a renewed sense of respect for him. Michael glanced at her, smiling gently, as if sensing the thoughts racing in her mind. "You've been working so hard," he said softly. "I can see it in your face. Traveling with a little one isn't easy, but you're doing your best. And that's all anyone can do." Sarah felt a lump in her throat. She had spent so many moments judging herself, feeling frustrated, and worrying about mistakes she might make with Tommy, and yet Michael's words reminded her that trying her best was enough. She realized that she had been carrying unnecessary weight, and it was a relief to acknowledge it. Tommy, sensing the shift in energy, leaned closer to Michael, laughing at a small joke about a silly airplane he had seen outside the window. Sarah smiled, realizing how healing laughter could be, especially when shared with someone who understood the situation without judgment. She looked around the terminal and noticed the hurried travelers, the stressed parents, the tired children, and she silently hoped that each of them could experience even a small fraction of the calm and kindness she was feeling now. It made her heart feel full to think that someone like Michael could quietly make a difference in so many lives, simply by being present and patient. She realized that life often offered lessons in unexpected moments, and sometimes these lessons came from people she least expected, even strangers who were quietly watching over others. She took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of gratitude and understanding spread through her body. She wanted to hold on to this moment, to remember the way Michael had calmed Tommy and reminded her of patience and compassion. It felt like a bridge between her past and present, a connection she had thought lost but was now restored in the most unexpected way. She looked at Michael again, and for a brief moment, she felt a sense of nostalgia, remembering the small acts of kindness he had shown years ago that had left a lasting impression on her. She realized that those moments, though small, had shaped her perception of care, trust, and human goodness. And now, seeing him interact with her child, she understood how these values could extend beyond memory and into real life, making ordinary moments extraordinary. Michael's gentle manner reminded her that people often carried unseen kindness, and recognizing it could transform even the most stressful days. She felt a renewed sense of hope, not only for the rest of her day at the airport but for life in general. She understood that patience, understanding, and genuine attention to others were powerful tools for connection, healing, and happiness. Watching Tommy laugh and play with Michael, she realized that these moments of connection were fleeting but infinitely valuable. She silently promised herself that she would try to carry this lesson forward, to approach her child with more understanding, to notice the small acts of kindness around her, and to be a little more patient with herself and others. The terminal continued its chaotic rhythm, travelers rushing past, luggage rolling, and announcements filling the air, yet Sarah felt grounded, as if she had found a quiet place in the middle of the storm. She glanced at Michael one last time, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over her. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of her emotions. "For helping him, and for reminding me to slow down." Michael smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling in a familiar, comforting way. "It's my pleasure," he said simply. "Sometimes we all need a little help. That's what life is about." Sarah nodded, feeling her chest swell with a quiet happiness she hadn't known in months. She realized that the memory of this moment, the calm and laughter shared between her child and a kind, familiar stranger, would stay with her for a long time. She felt lighter, more capable, and ready to face whatever came next in her day. And as she held Tommy's hand, feeling the warmth of his small fingers against hers, she understood that sometimes the smallest gestures, a gentle word, a patient presence, a soft smile could make the most profound difference in someone's life. Michael's kindness had reminded her of the value of empathy, patience, and genuine care, and Sarah knew that this encounter, brief yet meaningful, would stay with her long after they boarded their flight, leaving her with a new appreciation for the quiet power of human connection. Sarah felt a strange mixture of relief and awe as she walked alongside Tommy and Michael, her son skipping lightly with newfound energy while holding Michael's hand. The airport, which had felt chaotic and overwhelming before, now seemed to fade into the background as if the three of them existed in a small, protective bubble of calm. She couldn't stop thinking about how life could surprise her in the most unexpected ways, how a single person could change the tone of an entire day with simple kindness. Michael's quiet presence, the way he spoke to Tommy without raising his voice, and the way he remembered her name had created a moment she would never forget. Memories of the past kept returning, reminding her of the countless times she had felt lost, frustrated, or alone, and how Michael had always shown up in ways small but meaningful. She felt a lump in her throat thinking about it, a mixture of nostalgia and gratitude she couldn't easily explain. As they moved toward a quieter waiting area near their gate, Sarah noticed small details she had never paid attention to before: the gentle smile Michael gave the cleaning staff as he passed by, the way he nodded politely to travelers, and the calm efficiency with which he pushed his cart. Everything about him radiated patience and care, qualities she had longed to see in herself and in the world around her. Tommy, now completely distracted by a small toy Michael had handed him, was laughing freely, his earlier stress completely gone, and Sarah felt a deep sense of relief wash over her. She realized how much tension she had been carrying, not just from the travel and delays, but from the weight of trying to manage everything on her own. Michael's presence reminded her that it was okay to accept help, to let someone else lighten the burden, and that strength could be found in moments of cooperation and understanding. As they settled near their gate, Sarah sat down with Tommy on her lap, watching him interact with Michael. She noticed how gentle Michael was, never forcing, never rushing, always allowing Tommy to explore and respond at his own pace. It struck her that such patience was a rare quality in the world, and she felt a deep admiration for him. Her thoughts wandered again to the past, recalling how Michael had quietly supported her through small, important moments in her life without expecting recognition. She realized that the kindness he showed her then was mirrored in the way he treated her son now, a continuation of a character she had trusted long ago. Sarah finally took a deep breath, feeling the tension in her shoulders ease. She looked at Michael and said softly, "I'm sorry for yelling at you earlier. I didn't mean to react that way. I was just stressed, and I didn't think." Michael shook his head gently, smiling in that familiar, patient way that always made her feel understood. "It's okay, Sarah," he said. "I understand. You're doing your best. That's all anyone can ask for, and that includes yourself." His words struck her in a way she hadn't expected, as if they carried not just forgiveness but also a gentle reminder to be kinder to herself. She looked at Tommy, who was now giggling at a funny face Michael had made, and felt a warmth spread through her heart. The combination of Michael's kindness and her son's laughter created a moment so tender and meaningful that Sarah wished she could freeze it in time. Around them, travelers moved in all directions, announcements filled the air, and the usual airport bustle continued, but none of it seemed important in comparison to the calm and understanding surrounding her little family. She realized that sometimes life offered lessons not in grand gestures or dramatic events, but in small, quiet moments of connection. A simple word, a gentle smile, or a patient presence could transform frustration into relief, chaos into calm, and fear into trust. Sarah felt a renewed sense of hope, not just for her day, but for her perspective on parenting, patience, and human connection. She realized that her son's happiness, and her own sense of calm, could be nurtured by paying attention, slowing down, and allowing moments of care to guide interactions. Michael glanced at her again, his eyes calm and knowing, and she felt a deep sense of gratitude for his presence. "You've always had a kind heart," he said softly, almost as if he were reading her thoughts. "It just takes time and perspective to see it in yourself." Sarah felt her chest tighten with emotion. His words resonated with her, reminding her that patience, understanding, and care were not signs of weakness, but forms of strength. She realized that her anger earlier had come from a place of fear and exhaustion, not cruelty, and Michael's calm approach had helped her see that clearly. She looked down at Tommy, now playing quietly with a small toy airplane, and felt a surge of love for both her child and the man who had so unexpectedly reminded her of the power of kindness. In that moment, she promised herself to carry this lesson forward, to approach challenges with patience, to notice the good in people, and to allow herself to accept help when needed. Michael, noticing the quiet reflection on her face, gave her a small nod, as if silently affirming the thoughts she was having. Sarah realized that this small act of reconnection had reminded her not just of the importance of kindness toward others, but also toward herself. Life, she reflected, was unpredictable and full of surprises, and sometimes the most meaningful moments arrived when she least expected them. As the minutes passed, she watched the way Michael quietly helped a few other travelers, offering directions and gentle reassurance to stressed parents and anxious children, and she felt a deep admiration for him. It made her understand that true kindness was consistent, quiet, and selfless, and that people like Michael left lasting impressions on the lives they touched. Sarah felt a renewed determination to be more present for Tommy, to recognize and appreciate acts of kindness, and to carry forward the lesson she had just learned in the midst of a hectic airport. The laughter of her son, the calm of Michael, and the warmth she felt inside created a sense of peace that had been missing from her life for far too long. She realized that even in a noisy, busy, and stressful environment, moments of connection and care could transform her entire outlook. And as she sat there, holding Tommy's hand and watching him interact with Michael, she understood that the world, despite its chaos, still held people whose quiet goodness could remind her of hope, patience, and the value of human connection in the most unexpected moments. As Sarah, Tommy, and Michael finally prepared to head toward their gate, a quiet sense of completion settled over her, the kind that comes after a storm has passed. The hectic airport seemed less imposing now, the noises, the hurried travelers, the rolling luggage all felt distant, almost secondary, as if the small, meaningful moments she had just shared were the only things that truly mattered. Tommy clutched a small toy airplane in one hand and Michael's hand in the other, his eyes bright with excitement and curiosity, and Sarah felt her heart swell with love and gratitude. She realized that her morning of stress, frustration, and lost patience had transformed into something far more significant, a reminder of the importance of connection, understanding, and quiet kindness. She glanced at Michael, noticing once more the calm and patient expression on his face, the same one that had always made her feel safe and supported all those years ago. It was remarkable to see how someone could carry that same warmth into adulthood, offering it freely to strangers and loved ones alike. Sarah reflected on the power of small gestures, the kneeling, the soft words, the attention to a child's needs, and she understood that these seemingly minor actions had a ripple effect far greater than she could have imagined. Tommy's laughter echoed through the terminal as Michael made another small joke, and Sarah could not help but smile, a genuine, unburdened smile that had been absent from her face for too long. In that moment, she understood that patience and empathy were not just virtues to aspire to, but practical tools that could transform everyday life, even in moments of chaos and exhaustion. As they approached the gate, Sarah felt a gentle tap on her shoulder and turned to see a fellow traveler who had observed their interaction. "That was really sweet," the woman said quietly, smiling. It's rare to see someone handle a child with such calmness. Sarah nodded, feeling a warmth in her chest. Yes, she replied softly. And it reminded me of something I'd almost forgotten: the importance of patience and understanding. She realized then that kindness was not just for others, but also for herself, that she could be gentle with her own frustrations and allow herself to grow from these experiences. Michael, sensing the completion of this chapter of the day, smiled and said, "You've done a great job with him, Sarah. You're a wonderful mother, even on days when it feels impossible." Sarah felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. His words, simple yet sincere, carried more weight than any praise she had received recently. She had been hard on herself, doubting her abilities, and yet Michael's calm assurance reminded her that she was capable of love, patience, and care, even under pressure. Tommy tugged at her sleeve, whispering, "Mommy, can we see Michael again?" Sarah laughed softly, a sound full of warmth and relief. "Maybe someday," she replied, feeling a sense of hope she hadn't realized she was missing. She knew that this day, this encounter, would remain with her forever, a quiet reminder of the goodness that existed in the world and the unexpected ways life could bring people together. She reflected on the past years, the moments of struggle and fatigue, and realized that Michael's appearance was more than coincidence. It was a lesson, a gentle nudge from life to remember what truly mattered. She thought about how often she had rushed through moments, too busy to notice kindness, too impatient to pause, and now she understood how important it was to slow down, to embrace these small acts of care, and to recognize the impact they could have. As they finally reached the gate and prepared to board, Sarah felt a profound sense of gratitude. She looked at Tommy, whose laughter had returned in full, and at Michael, who had quietly guided them through a stressful morning with patience and understanding. She realized that life's challenges, no matter how overwhelming, could be softened by simple acts of kindness, and she silently promised herself to carry this lesson forward. She would remember today whenever she felt frustrated, whenever she struggled with patience, and whenever she questioned her own abilities. Life, she understood now, was a series of small moments strung together, and it was in these moments that true meaning was found through empathy, understanding, and connection. Michael gave her a small nod, a silent gesture of reassurance and mutual recognition. Sarah felt a warm glow of happiness and peace settle in her chest, a feeling that had been absent for far too long. She realized that the world, despite its chaos and unpredictability, was filled with people whose quiet goodness could leave lasting impressions and transform ordinary days into extraordinary memories. Tommy reached up to hug Michael, who chuckled softly and hugged him back, careful not to startle him. Sarah felt tears streaming down her cheeks now, but they were tears of relief, gratitude, and joy, the kind that cleansed the heart and reminded her of the beauty of connection. She understood, more deeply than ever, that moments like these, unexpected yet profound, were what made life worth living. Boarding the plane, Sarah held Tommy's hand tightly, feeling a renewed sense of calm and purpose. She glanced one last time at Michael, whose presence had reminded her of patience, kindness, and the simple power of being there for others. As the plane took off, she thought about the journey ahead, both literally and figuratively, and realized that the lessons she had learned this day would stay with her forever, guiding her as a parent, as a friend, and as a human being capable of understanding, patience, and love. She smiled softly to herself, holding Tommy close, knowing that the memory of this day, the gentle words, the calming presence, and the laughter of her son would remain a beacon of hope and warmth in her life, a reminder that even in the busiest, noisiest, and most stressful moments, the kindness of one person could change everything.